If you're in business, you probably have a website, but can your site handle your growth? How many visitors before your site slows down or crashes? What about storage and data security? From web hosting to virtual servers, Pair Networks provides the online infrastructure you need to start, grow, and flourish. When it comes to security and updates, don't worry, we've got you covered. Our 24/7 US-based customer support is the best in the industry. No frustrating chatbots or sitting on hold for hours. Check out pair.com today to learn more. That's PAIR.com.
Welcome to the Attention Deficit Disorder Expert Podcast Series by Attitude Magazine.
Welcome, everyone, to this week's Attitude Magazine's ADHD Experts webinar broadcast. We hope everyone is staying safe and staying well. Whether you are taking part in the live webinar today or listening to the webinar replay or podcast a few days or weeks from now, I think you'll find today's topic, A Parent's Guide to Daily Routines, Screen Limits, and Safe Social Outings, of great interest. Before we get started, let me note a couple of housekeeping items. Those of you tuned into the live webinar may download the slides now by clicking on the Event Resources tab of your webinar screen. For new information on how to purchase the Certificate of Attendance option, look for instructions in the email you receive directly at the end of the webinar. For those of you listening to this broadcast in replay or podcast mode, please log on to the webinar replay page on the Attitude website. This is a long URL, so be patient with me. www.attitudemag.com/webinar/summer-ADHD-children-pandemic. I'll repeat it again. I'm sorry. I have to because I know people asked me last time. www.attitudemag.com/webinar/summer-ADHD-children-pandemic. And you'll receive access to both the accompanying slides and access to the Certificate of Attendance option. Now for the topic today. Now that the school year is over and the warm weather has arrived, many families are scrambling to navigate the summer without camps and other planned activities. Most kids have hours of unstructured time with no responsibilities, while many parents are working from home or have already returned to their jobs. How can you and your family make this transition smoothly and look forward to a sane, stress-free summer? How can you get some much-needed recuperation time as well? The good news is that Sharon Saline will offer you practical, easy tools for setting up a successful summer. You'll learn how to create effective summer routines, cope with anxiety about COVID, manage screen time, and even arrange safe peer interactions. Sharon Saline, a licensed clinical psychologist with more than 30 years' experience, is the top expert on ADHD, anxiety, learning differences, and mental health challenges, and their impact on school and family dynamics. She's author of What Your ADHD Child Wishes You Knew, Working Together to Empower Kids for Success in School and Life. Learn more about the book and reach out to Sharon at www.drsharonsaline.com. That's drsharonsaline.com. You can ask questions of Sharon during her presentation, and we will try to get to as many of them as we can after she finishes. That all being said, I'll turn it over to Sharon and start the webinar.
Thank you so much, Wayne, and thank you for that beautiful introduction. And it's a pleasure to be here with Attitude and the Attitude community, talking about such an important topic: save our summer. How can we create a summer where we feel restored, where we have activities for our kids, and we pivot successfully? So here we are in the new normal. Okay, it's a confusing, masked world. There have been huge adjustments for all of us in all areas of our lives. Kids are at home for a long period of time, much longer than they've probably ever expected. They've lost what's familiar to them or beloved about the summer camps, casually seeing friends, playing outside, sports, participating in music, drama, or art activities. And this is on top of and following the significant losses in routines and beloved activities in the spring. So there's a lot of things that kids are struggling with right now. Parents are either working from home, so there's more family time and less opportunity to supervise and do things with kids, or parents are actually going to work. People are returning to work and leaving kids with extended family or friends or daycare, or sometimes for teenagers at home on their own for the day. There's a new constant worry about safety that's part of this new normal regarding illness, and whether this is stated or not, everybody carries it around. Also, job, food, housing, healthcare insecurity. These concerns are greater than they've probably ever been in our lifetimes. And this higher stress means less patience for everyone and often more conflict. And really, frankly, of the many people I talk to, people are over it. They're over COVID. It's hot. They don't want to wear masks. They want a break and they need some relief. So let me see. I'm forwarding the slide here. Okay. So how are we going to save this summer? So anxiety, disappointment, depression, these contribute to family stress and conflict. And so we want to address the feelings first. And this will improve flexibility, particularly for kids with ADHD, who may not be great at shifting from one thing to another, at tolerating disappointment, or at managing the big feelings that are brewing inside of them. So we want to create clear and simple daily routines, use incentives to motivate kids, because we know that kids with ADHD need external rewards to help them get motivated. And we want to brainstorm a long-range plan for the amount of time that you're home this summer. What are some of the keys to success? The first key is collaboration. You have to work together at creating these plans and understanding and listening to what everybody's needs are. We have to figure out childcare challenges. And while parents of younger kids can take their kids places, once your kids are old enough to voice an opinion, and that's usually, around third grade, they're going to start really pushing back. You will see, obviously, kids who are younger saying, no, I don't want to do that, but they're accustomed to doing what you set up for them. Once kids get a little bit older, they really want to participate in what their summer's going to look like. And I think that's important for us to consider. We want to basically put have tos before want tos. And I talked right then earlier about incentives. And so what that means is that we want kids to do what they need to do or have to do first and earn the things that they want to do. So we'll be talking today about easy on, easy off answers to screen dilemmas, which is one of the things I hear over and over from families right now. And finally, we want to create and foster self-care for everyone in your family through discussion, instructions, and consistency. So there's going to be a poll right now, because I'd like to hear from you. What are some of your top concerns about this summer? And while you are filling out that poll, I'm going to talk a little bit more about why kids with ADHD are really struggling right now to adapt to the changes that we're facing. So take a minute and fill out this poll about your top concerns regarding your child or teen this summer. And let me talk a little bit about what we, sort of background that we understand regarding kids with ADHD, but we need to maybe remember when we think about this summer. So first of all, we know that kids with ADHD often struggle with flexibility, impulse control, emotional regulation, organization, and self-awareness. And these executive functioning skills are critical for adapting to new situations and dealing with uncomfortable feelings that accompany change, particularly unexpected change. Kids with ADHD have lower tolerance levels for dealing with uncertainty, disappointment, and discomfort. These are kids who hear every day at school or face on a daily basis things they don't do well, they can't do, but they have to do, things they struggle with. And a lot of activities and events, and particularly things that they enjoy doing, have been canceled, whether that's sports or playing an instrument or doing an improv theater group or being able to just simply play outside in the neighborhood with other kids. These things have been restricted in ways that have left them with fewer options for what to do with themselves and coping. So hold on a second. I'm getting a message. Okay, so I have the results of the poll in, so I'm going to share those in 1 second. So the other thing that we want to talk about is that because kids have lost a lot, there's grief. And grief is manifested for kids in different ways. And it might be anxiety, it could be depression, it could be oppositional behavior and language. And so the kids with ADHD are struggling also to shift. Shift flexibility is another one of those key executive functioning skills. And so they've had to shift and they're unclear about the future. And how are they going to maneuver in the present in a way that's safe and also allows them free self-expression? There's a profound sadness for a lot of kids, particularly kids with ADHD, that they really can't process developmentally. They may not have language for it, or they just have these intense feelings. So many kids with ADHD, of course, are already anxious. And this situation may intensify not just general anxiety, but it may alter it to include social anxiety, specific phobias, bugs, darkness, or some obsessive compulsive behaviors. A lot of kids right now feel very disempowered, and the lack of agency they have about their daily lives combines with a sense with their anger into a ball of rage. And you can see this rage in some irrational expressions of anger, in pushback, but you may also see it in depression. And so sometimes that kind of anger can mask a real loneliness, sadness, and unhappiness that's underneath that they can't talk about, so they're showing you anger. We also have seen trauma responses in kids right now, and those can be flashbacks, sleeplessness, insomnia, nightmares, new fears. For kids who've lost family members or people they know to COVID, that's traumatic. For most kids having to be kind of trapped inside for many weeks this spring, that was traumatic as well. So kids are really juggling a whole lot of emotional stuff underneath the surface, and that's on top of living with an attention issue, perhaps a learning disability, or being on the autism spectrum. So that's part of the framework. That's the foundation that we're coming from. And let's go back to our survey. So what are your primary concerns about your children and teens this spring? So 81% of you said too much screen time. Got it. 55% said a lack of motivation. 49% said boredom. 30% said anger. And 13% said inflexibility. So we're going to talk today about screen time, motivational issues, and boredom. And as I continue to speak about anger. So we addressed this slide, so I'm going to move forward. So let's talk a little bit more about these big feelings, because I think it's really important before we save our summer to understand how we can best deal with these big feelings. And the first thing you've got to do when your kids are having big feelings is start with empathy, with compassion. As I said, kids are experiencing a daily range of emotions, from sadness to disappointment, anger, relief, worry, and they're fed up. Marco, age 15, told me, I'm fed up with the isolation. I'm over this. It wears on you. Stacia, age 11, said, everything is canceled this summer. What am I supposed to do? I just stay in my room. I can't go out. I wish my parents would stop nagging me about screens. So kids are tired of following the rules and they want a break, and there's no break. We adults are tired of following the rules, right? And there's no break. So it's difficult for kids with ADHD, as we know, to manage big feelings. Emotional control is a key executive functioning skill, and it's innately and intimately linked to working memory. So they miss so many things about their lives, their friends. They miss the freedom of not thinking about stuff just like we do. I don't know about you, but when I leave the house, I'm like, do I have my mask? Do I have my car keys? Do I have my water bottle? Do I have my sunglasses? Inevitably, I forget something. There's a lot for our brains to adjust to, and it's tiring. And they're angry. And so when kids are angry, who are the people they're going to take it out on? The people nearest and dearest to them. I'm sorry to say that. So there you will see that kind of regression in certain behaviors that kids have moved beyond. There's a number of young children with and without ADHD who were toilet trained and are back in diapers again. That's an example that may not be relevant in your family, but I think it's a really concrete example of how kids are struggling. Older kids who were able to do things without reminders, set the table, pick up their room, whatever it is in your family that your child has sort of made progress on, may be stepping back. That is normal right now. We want to validate and empathize with our kids. We want to validate their struggles, their upset emotions, and we want to empathize. And we're going to do this relying on the 3 R's. Reflect. You're going to listen with compassion to what your child is saying to you and reflect what you hear. Oh, yeah, what I would say to Marco is, I can understand that you're over this. It does wear on you. And it's really hard because we don't see an end. You're reflecting and you're validating. You're going to recognize patterns of worries or anger. Zoom out as a parent and stay out of the content and look at the bigger picture of what's going on. Ask questions, brainstorm with your kids about possible solutions, and collaborate with them. When you collaborate with kids, when you ask them what do they think that they could do that might improve a particular situation, they get more buy-in and they will participate more readily. You'll see more cooperation. So it seemed to me, you can say that before COVID, you actually cleared your plate from the table and put it in the dishwasher without us having an argument. How could we get back to that? Ask them for their opinion. And the final R is reset. Recalculating. Just like your GPS, you're going to redirect your child's attention to something that could be calming when they're upset. And that would mean planning for upset and being able to choose from some of those planned options rather than try to calm down in a moment by having them calm down, in a moment by saying, hey, you need to calm down, or, take some deep breaths. That's probably going to backfire. We want to hear from kids what helps them calm down. And then we want to remind them and point them to the list of these desired activities. So I spoke earlier a little bit about the increased anxiety and depression, and I want to say a few words about this. So anxiety disorders are problems related to fears and worries. They differ based on the focus of a person's worry. Anxiety is about safety and security. It wants to make uncomfortable feelings and uncertainty go away immediately. That isn't really an option right now. So this is why we have kids with ADHD who already run anxious. And they run anxious because they've listened in their lives to many, many comments about what they could be doing differently or better, right? And so when you hear over and over about what you should be doing instead of what you are doing, you develop a low level of persistent anxiety that I'm off. And I don't know when I'm going to mess up because I can't control it, but I'm going to mess up. And so I'm a little worried about when that's going to happen. And these are not things necessarily that they will articulate to you on a daily basis, but I've heard many kids tell me that this is what they live with. So anxious kids often have low self-confidence, and they also struggle with peer relationships, as well as academic difficulties and family conflict. Now, anxiety is a natural human response that comes from serving a purpose, right? So it's a warning sign for us that something's amiss, or where we don't feel like we have the resources to deal with what is in front of us. A lot of kids want to make anxiety go away. And that's actually not a particularly practical or realistic goal, because we have anxiety for a reason. We're wired for it. So what we want to do is teach kids how to put their hand on the volume button of that anxiety so that they can start to turn it down, that they can reassure themselves instead of coming to you or other adults to fix it. Kids are justifiably anxious right now. Some are afraid to leave the house. Others are worried about returning to school or seeing friends. We have to address these fears with information, work together with kids to develop coping strategies and plans of action, and to talk about the reality, if they're concerned, of what would happen if someone in your family got sick. What is your family plan? Of course, children of anxious parents have been found to be more likely to be anxious, and to perceive ambiguous situations as threatening. So I would ask you as parents a question. How much are you talking about your anxiety or your concern or your worry about what's going on, both in front of your children? So you think they're doing something else and they're not listening, but they're always listening, right? Or directly to your children, because we want to be aware of what behaviors we're doing that would be increasing their anxiety, and what we might be able to do that would lower their anxiety. I also want to say something about depression. So a lot of kids, particularly teenagers, are feeling despair. They've moved on from disappointment to a loss of hope about the future. And this is where we see that lack of motivation. They don't feel like things matter anymore. Often untreated anxiety will lead to depression, so that's something to keep in mind. But this powerlessness and the lack of agency that kids are feeling, particularly teenagers, can lead not only to anger, which will mask depression, but to depression itself. And so we want to try to help kids figure out what is the circle within which they can operate. Where can they exert agency and independence? So to finish this little part of my presentation, I want to share some warning signs that your child or teen might need mental health support. Most therapists are doing telehealth right now, which is challenging with kids, but it is helpful and practical, and particularly if you can find someone who does some family work, that can be very useful right now. So we want to look at these warning signs that would indicate that your child or teen might be struggling beyond what we would expect in this unusual situation. So if kids are quick to anger, they're increasingly isolated, and they are over-focused on screen time, these are some of the signs. Greater trouble with focusing and concentration than you might expect, given who you know your child is. Unexplained headaches or other physiological complaints. Evidence or admission of inappropriate substance use. We may also see kids biting their nails, pulling their hair, picking their skin, arguing, screaming, staying up to all hours of the night, withdrawing to their room for hours at a time, hitting people or breaking things. These behaviors are outward signs of their internal turmoil, and I encourage you to speak to your pediatrician or primary care provider for referrals for therapy. So what is your big picture for the summer? So we need to sort of, as a family, sit down and talk about the summer. Ask these kinds of questions. If you can make 3 wishes about this summer, more wishes is not one of the wishes. What would you ask for? What would you most like to see happen this summer? Think about this for yourself, right? Reflect back what you hear from your kids and share your own ideas that you've had for yourself and for them. What types of ideas might be useful? Well, you could work on non-academic skills such as cooking, following a series of recipes. Maybe, you decide you want to bake all kinds of chocolate chip cookies for the summer. And once a week, you're going to bake one recipe. Learning to play a song or on an instrument, maybe pick up an instrument that you played before but you haven't been attending to, or maybe you decide, that your child would like to play a ukulele. Not too expensive, not a lot of investment, lots of great YouTube how-to videos. Reading a series of books like the Joey Pigza books, which are about boys with ADHD, or graphic novels. There's also a couple new great ADHD books for girls, Focused, and This Is Not the Abby Show. Maybe work together as a family, keep a scrapbook of headlines from this time, buy an inflatable pool that you can all fit in, have kids make a weekly meal, maybe breakfast for dinner once a week, plant some herbs or vegetables in window pots or in the ground. Do what I call a magical mystery tour once a week. Pick a place you've never been to, walk there, drive there, explore. So, of course, before you do anything, you want to check the CDC guidelines. And I did a little bit of research before this webinar to see what are high-risk and low-risk activities. And this is what I found. High-risk activities include contact sports, camps, particularly sleepaway camps. Some day camps are setting up kids in pods. And so you're with those 10 people. And if one person in your pod gets sick, then the entire pod cannot go to camp. Sharing meals are high-risk activities. Low-risk activities would be perhaps going to a beach or a lake, being distanced from other people, swimming away from other people, outdoor play dates. For example, I've seen kids in a park near my house playing ultimate frisbee or throwing the frisbee. They have their mask on. They actually have gloves. Tennis is something else that I've seen kids play. But there are other shared exercises where you're sort of alone together, hiking, biking, rollerblading, walking, having a catch. So we want to try to come up with some sort of summer activities for kids that they enjoy. And I would encourage you to think about finding a family activity. Maybe there's a volunteer organization or something that you as a family could do each week. It would help you. Volunteering is great because it helps you feel good about yourself, and it allows your kids to feel like they have a sense of purpose, that they're making a difference in the world. And that's really great for kids to feel like they're contributing. And let's talk a little bit about the summer slide. So kids with ADHD are really fed up with school. And they need a break. They've been slogging through this spring with online learning, and that's probably been unpleasant for them and difficult, although for some kids it's been a relief because the social pressure of school has been removed for them. If your child's asking for time, give them the time. While reading texts and writing, messages on Facebook or on Instagram may seem fruitless, kids are actually reading and writing. You can put free reading into the daily schedule we're going to talk about in a minute and let them pick the materials. Maybe it's a sports page. Maybe it's a graphic novel. Maybe it's any text of any interest. Maybe they like to play Sudoku or word searches. These are all ways that they're using academic skills. Then later on, if your child has taken a break but has work to do for next year, or has a skill that they're trying to work on, I'm working with a child right now who is doing Khan Academy for math because he's 2 years behind, and that's fine for him. It actually provides structure for his day. So he took 2 weeks off, and now he's into his Khan Academy. So how are we going to improve cooperation? So the first thing we're going to do is create a daily routine. So you want to reduce nagging and reminding by having a weekly family meeting. You're going to ask your kids about some of their goals, and you're going to share some of yours. You're going to create agreement together based on brainstorming and collaboration that addresses everybody's goals. And what I would encourage you to do as parents is to lean into what matters to your kids first, because I'm sure what's on their list about things that they might want to change or have happen this summer probably are somewhere on your list. They may not be at the top, but if we put something that matters to your kids into this routine, into this brainstorming, your kids will buy in and participate more. You want to write everything that you agree upon down, because we know that visual cues are so important for ADHD brains. And discuss the issue of reminders. How do kids want to be reminded? What types of reminders? Maybe it's Post-its. Maybe it's a statement that you sing. I would encourage you to look at my website, www.SharonSaline.com, for more information about how to give instructions to kids so they can listen. Because what I talk about is something called the rule of three. You get down to their eye level, you make eye contact, you state your direction, and then they repeat your direction, not once, but twice, because it's that second time that encodes it in their working memory. So you want to be able to respond to anger and pushback. So you want to write into whatever routine and agreement you make non-cooperation clauses. What are the boundaries and what are the consequences? Do you want to have a curse jar where every time someone cursed, they drop some money into that jar, and then you decide as a family what charity you're going to give that to? And you want to work on apologies of action. One of the things I hear so much from parents of kids with ADHD is that their kids say, "I'm sorry," and it seems like a throwaway. And what I want to encourage you to do is have kids learn how to say they're sorry and mean it, but also show they're sorry to make amends. What would that be? And of course, we want to find out what helps calm kids down when they're upset. And I want you to use natural and logical consequences. Punishments don't teach kids any skills, right? So what we want to do is rely on natural consequences, which is the inevitable result of a person's action. You tell your daughter to take an umbrella because it's raining. She doesn't. She gets wet. A logical consequence is the result of a person's action, but it's imposed by an adult or caregiver. You tell your son not to skateboard in the street, and he does, and you catch him. The logical consequence might be that he hasn't shown you the maturity he needs to ride that skateboard, and he has to earn it back. Logical consequences need to be reasonable and related to the problem. Remember that kids with ADHD will act out when they are bored, angry, and frustrated, confused, or anxious. Expect it. Don't address problem behaviors in the moment. Create a plan and for success and put non-cooperation clauses into that plan. Work from an earned privileges mindset. Because I said so is not an effective response sometimes. I work with a family. They have 3 boys, 2 of whom have ADHD. And they've decided that in order for their kids to earn their phones every day, they cannot curse because they have one child who's about 7 and 2 who are 13 and 15. And when there's a curse, the father said, I give them a warning. I say, that's your first warning. And if they curse again, they lose the phone. They lose their phone for the day, i.e. they did not earn the privilege of keeping the phone. The next day, they get the phone back. So I think that's a really important thing to think about. So there's a small incentive for short-term progress, like maybe if you ask them to do something and they follow through on picking up their room, they can pick out the dinner for takeout, or bigger incentives for longer kinds of tasks, like they finish that Khan Academy class and they can get a new game or a baseball glove or clothes or maybe even a bicycle. Who knows? So how are we going to set up smart daily routines? You're going to work on this foundation of collaboration, but you're also going to think about consistency. And consistency isn't perfection, it's steadiness. So endless freedom means endless screen time. That's what parents are telling me over and over again right now, which doesn't really benefit you or your teen. So what I want to encourage you to do is to think like a camp counselor. Your goal is a reasonable schedule that isn't too restrictive, but is predictable. So divide your day into chunks of time and allocate these periods to various activities, including exercise, projects. Making things with your hands is a great thing for kids with ADHD to do, whether that's models, Lego, cooking, beading, learning how to knit, something like that. Okay. So you want to create a schedule that has meals and snacks and screen time and resting. And it doesn't have to be rigid, but it has to be consistent. So a sample schedule might be wake up by 10, have breakfast, get dressed, activity period 1, i.e. you do something. Lunch, activity period 2. You do something else. And then maybe some quiet time for reading or listening to music, something that promotes calm, designated screen time, because when you complete activity 1 and activity 2, you've now earned the screen time, right? What I'm going to talk a little bit more about that, because you've not just earned screen time, but maybe you've also earned bonus screen time. So shower, lights out, and then, by midnight or whatever the time is that's appropriate in your family. You're going to adjust your routines if your teenager has a job or if there's an online class or tutoring. Do that in the morning when your kids' brains are freshest. So I want to say something about this idea of earning screen time. And so let's go to the next slide. So here's the thing. In order for you to reduce fighting about screens with your kids, you have to have some screen time be a gimme and some screen time be earned, right? So you may want your child to have 3 hours of screen time right now, and your child may want to have 6 hours of screen time per day. So you're going to have to figure out how to negotiate that. And what I would encourage you to do is first think about your needs. Movies, games, TV shows, online activities can be crucial to helping you juggle work, childcare, and recently homeschooling. We want to use the screen time to serve you first and then meet your child's goals, okay? Or your child's needs. So how do you know what's enough? Talk to your pediatrician. The American Academy of Pediatrics states that screen time should not take up a majority of a child's waking hours, and that screen time needs to be part of a balanced life, not the focus of life. So what are the signs that there's too much screen time in your family or too much screen time for your child or teen? Headaches, disrupted sleep or insomnia, vision fatigue, loss of interest in other activities, lethargy. The first thing you can do, of course, is set parental controls on Netflix, on phones, on your Wi-Fi. But you can also talk about the best times to use screens based on social issues and pleasure. So I'm working with a family, and their little girl, she likes to play computer games, and she wants to play the game in the morning after breakfast because she has some friends on. She gets 2 hours of screen time automatically every day, but it has to be broken up. into 1 hour chunks. So she does 1 hour in the morning, and then after the afternoon activity, she gets her second hour. She also can earn bonus time, which I'm going to tell you about in a minute. So those are the best times for her because that's when her friends are on. So talk with your kids about when are the best times. I work with another family with a young man who's in his teens, and he has both ADHD and he's on the spectrum. And he only wants his screen time in one chunk at night because that's when his friends are on. So you really need to find out like when your child wants to be on screens and what he's doing when he's on them. I encourage you, if you can, to create some balance in this. So we want to balance fun screen time with constructive screen time. There are lots of ways to be on technology. Audible has free books. Scholastic has activities and books. There's writing or drawing free classes online. You can visit zoos. There's Dungeon and Dragon games. So you want to really help your kids figure out, what are the different kinds of screen time that they can have in their life, because not all screen time is the same. It's also important that you create family screen-free times and monitor your own screen use. So one thing that, I want to encourage you to start with is meals. Meals are a great time not to have a screen. And maybe you watch TV every night in your family with dinner. That's fine. Maybe you could cut it back to, 6 days a week or 4 days a week. And the other time, talk about things. Maybe play some word games or go around the table and do a high and a low of the day, the rose and thorn, so to speak. We want to try to have everyone be with each other when you're with each other, particularly when parents are with your kids. What Yolanda, age 13, says, what I can't stand is when dad stays on his phone, but tells me to get off mine. It drives me crazy. It's so hypocritical. I get really mad. He's not even paying attention to me. So that's what we don't want kids to feel, right? We want kids to feel like they actually have your attention. So what are some sensible screen solutions? Oops, excuse me. So we want to think, first of all, screen time is a privilege. It's not an entitlement. Most parents I know own their child's devices and they pay for, Wi-Fi connection. So you want to create a collaborative plan about when, where, and how screen time is going to occur. So if you in your head say, I want my child to have 3 hours a day, you're going to decide how much daily screen time, not for school, that you want your child to have. Then you have a conversation with them about how much they would like to have. Decide on a baseline amount and a bonus amount of time. So in my example, I'm going to come into that conversation with my kids and say, I think it should be 2 hours a day. They're going to say 6 hours a day and be all upset. And then I'm going to meet them at 3. Plus, I'm going to offer them a half-hour bonus for cooperating. And let me explain that. So how kids ease off their baseline screen time will determine if they earn that bonus time. Okay, so you can attach a bonus time to completion of chores. You can attach to using respectful language, not yelling or cursing. You can attach it to keeping your hands and your body to yourself instead of, fighting with your sister or brother. So this is very important. Any desired behavior you want, you link to the screen time. And you can do this in any number of ways. Like you may decide, in my family, I'm going to give my kids 2 hours. And then that third hour is going to be bonus. They have to earn that. And if when it's time to get off, like let's say that in that family where they do an hour in the morning, an hour in the afternoon, if in that morning hour they yell at me and they fight with me when it's time to get off, they have not earned the privilege of bonus time, or they've not earned the privilege of half of their bonus time. The other half they may get later. We want kids to be, if they are able to ease off the second hour. We want kids to understand, and I'm happy to answer more questions about this. I want to get through these slides. So we want kids to understand that they have some authority and autonomy for the things that they're doing. Okay. Screens need to stay out of bedrooms at night. I feel really strongly about this. There's no reason to have phones in the room. Keep the phone in your room. Some families I know put an Alexa in their kids' rooms, and they keep the device in their rooms at night so their kids can say to Alexa, "Hey, Alexa, I want to listen to this story," or "I want to listen to this music. That's how I go to sleep." That's fine. And the final thing I want to say is that when your kids are actually cooperating with you around their screens, they need lots of acknowledgement. This is hard for them to do. Oops. So let's talk briefly about having socializing and being with friends. First, we want to empathize. Kids are bored, they're frustrated, they're lonely, and we want to discuss the benefits, not just to them, but also to society, of them following social distancing rules and how that helps everyone. We want kids to understand that social distancing is tough, and this is really tough, particularly for tweens and teens, because their connections with friends are their world. So we want to strike a balance, help them strike a balance between safe in-person hanging out and spending time online or with friends, having a Zoom movie night or gaming. We want to help with this mix of online and face-to-face is how we want to encourage kids to reframe their social lives. So show them what social distancing looks like. Take out a tape measure. This is 6 feet. Keep gloves and masks in their backpacks or their cars. Make a list of outdoor spaces kids can safely meet their friends, and be very clear about the guidelines. Maybe hover in another part of that area so you can see if they're following it. And if they're not, then you're going to have to change what you're doing, and they will have to earn back your trust. 1 second. Okay. Sorry, there was a message. Okay, so you want to help kids come up with solutions to situations. What should you do if this happens? And then review that with them when they leave. Deal with lying heads on. Kids are going to lie to escape consequences because they've forgotten the rules and they feel ashamed about their actions. Lay out the importance of telling you if they've messed up and might be exposed or might have exposed themselves. Instead of punishing, use it as an opportunity to learn. And of course, living together means chipping in. So this is a time when everybody is going to help out. You want to talk to your kids about coming together for the collective well-being of the family. And if kids weren't doing chores before, this probably isn't the time to add something new. Instead, link the completion of their chores to some of the incentives and their beloved screen time. Again, you want to discuss with them how to remind them and what kinds of reminders and what's going to happen if you remind them and they don't follow through. And I'd consider thinking about family chore time, a time when everybody's chipping in. That way, they'll be more motivated because they'll be inspired by what other people are doing. And finally, I want to say something about self-care. It's more important now than ever. You're all burnt out. The stress, the anxiety, the depression, the loneliness. It's very important to take time for restorative activities that rejuvenate us. And when people don't feel taken care of or restored, they become frustrated more easily and lash out, including kids will do this particularly. So commit to some type of regular self-care for yourself. You, as a parent, you need this, and foster this for each person in your family. You want to figure out what will help you regain your sense of calm and then assist your loved ones to do the same. Check in with yourself, step outside of routines that cause you stress, recenter, and then enter back into the fray. I'm a big fan of going to the bathroom. If you're in the middle of a stress, eruption, go in, wash your hands, splash some water on your face, breathe, tell yourself you've been here before, you can manage it. That's one way, but I'm thinking more about a daily activity. And finally, check in with your kids. Ask them what helps them feel good and quiet inside. What can they do and relax without worrying about performing or disappointing people? Just being with themselves. Lego, reading, listening to a story, a podcast, music, Sudoku. Everybody should have some time in the course of a day or a week when they are doing that. So I'm going to wrap things up now. I encourage you to get moving, exercise together. You'll feel good, and your kids will feel good as well. And I have some ideas here on the slides. And then, of course, discover what feels nurturing, pay attention to what's going well, focus on your resilience, and schedule some downtime. So thank you so much. This last sign is just a review. Again, we want to work on one thing at a time. Use that rule of 4. Make eye contact, state your direction, have them state the direction back to you, not once, but twice. This helps improve working memory. Link have-tos to want-tos and differentiate between them. And write things down. When you can refer kids to a list, you don't have to be a reminding machine. Thank you so much. There is, I believe, Wayne, a free gift for managing anxiety. If people go to my website, I think I sent a link for that. I believe that you have that. So,
okay.
I don't know.
I don't know exactly where that is, but I'm sure it must be on the slides here somewhere. I'll ask Lily to get in touch with.
I don't know. But okay. For those people who signed up, we can send something out.
Yes.
Okay, thanks. So should we get to the questions?
Yeah, loads of questions from parents, but this one stood out because it's from Lily, who's age 11. She says, I have ADHD. Life is hard right now. I'm finally seeing friends, but I'm worried that I might get sick and they might get sick and we may die. Please save my summer. So I think, this probably plays in the back, maybe not even so far in the back of kids' minds. So, I don't know how you could talk her through this, but.
Hi, Lily. I'm so glad you joined today. Of course you're worried about getting sick. Everybody is. Here's some good news. Young people don't generally die from COVID, and I would bet that you're taking lots of safety precautions like wearing masks and using hand sanitizer. In fact, it's a great thing if parents can make sure their kids are carrying hand sanitizer around. If you're wearing a mask and you're using hand sanitizer, you're probably going to be okay. I think that it must be so lonely not being able to see your friends. And so if there's a way that you can see them outside and you're still wearing a mask, that's the best option. Maybe there's some ways that you can think with your parents of activities you can do outside that would be fun. And I might want to encourage you to try to set up like a Zoom once a week with your friends where you maybe share a screen and watch a show together and everybody can have popcorn and talk as if you're in your own living room. Good luck, Lily.
I like that advice. A mother is pointing out that in her kids and in her kids' friends, she's seeing a lot more sadness and withdrawal rather than outward anger. Can you speak to that, please?
Yes. So I think there's been a transition. Initially, we saw a little more outward anger, and now what we're seeing is this, sadness that is really related to despair. And hopelessness and powerlessness. It's this thing that none of us like is not going away. And it's very hard for kids, particularly kids with ADHD whose brains are now or not now brains, to look into the future. They just don't have that developmental skill yet and see that eventually sometime there will be a vaccine and we will be able to move back to what are we considered normal. And so I think when kids are sad, the thing that we can do is to empathize, normalize it, and let them know, of course, that there is a reason to be sad. And what are we doing to try to make the lemonade out of these lemons? It's a yes and rather than an either or. Yes, I'm going to validate your feelings. And I'm going to really work on how we are bouncing back bouncing back appropriately. So we want to do both at the same time. And I would encourage you to think about ways in which your child already has developed some skills or been out with other friends and had a flavor of what they've missed. That it may feel like a drop in the bucket, but at least it's a drop in the bucket. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Here's a real, challenging question. How do I keep my child socially connected when he is refusing to Zoom, Facebook, and he has significant difficulties maintaining proper distancing in person with friends? Mm-hmm. So that's a tough one. How?
That's a really tough question, and it makes sense to me. So what I'm seeing now in particularly in teens is that they are so fed up with Zooming. I mean, they're beyond Zoom fatigue to Zoom exhaustion. They don't want to have any social connections online. They want them to be in person. And so the thing is, that's okay if you can do it safely. And here's what safely means. You wear a mask. And if I don't think you're doing it safely, then we have a problem, because I want to be able to trust you. I need to see that you're doing what I'm asking. And so that might mean that he sees people in his driveway for a while. Or, he's allowed to have people in your backyard if you have one, or if you have a little balcony where they can separate, but they're wearing masks and they're together. He's got to show you that he's demonstrating good judgment, because it's not just himself who's at risk, but it's everyone in the family, and everyone in the family who you come in contact with. And that's, I think, that piece of information that's so important.
Mm-hmm. This one's a little different from Lily's concern, but it's in the same ballpark, and several people have asked parents, any suggestions on how to deal with that fear of returning back to school with the virus? My son is ready for school and see friends, but the anxiety is sure there and it's increasing. Any thoughts on that?
Oh, yes, I have many thoughts about this. I may not be able to get to them all today. So many kids are share this same anxiety. They desperately want to go back to school, and they're afraid. They are fundamentally afraid that they will get the virus, or that they'll get people sick. And so what we have to do is we have to counter that fear with information. We have to acknowledge the fear and counter it with information. You have every right to be worried. It's scary. And the adults are making plans to make sure that when you go back to school, you'll be safe. And we as a family are going to create some plans so that you know what to do in various situations. In fact, we can even practice them. We can do a little role play right here in the house. You're going to have a hand sanitizer in your pocket. You're going to have a mask and an extra one. This is how we are going to protect you. I think that's really important, because we want to acknowledge that fear is real. We want to tell them how we're going to be dealing with that fear in a concrete way. And we're going to offer them behavioral solutions in various situations and things they can tell themselves so that they can soothe themselves and stay calm when they're not around you. Because that's what kids who are anxious need most.
Right. Two quick ones before we have to go. Could you clarify what you meant by giving away belongings as a sign of anxiety or depression? What would that look like?
So when I say giving away belongings, it's one thing to decide I have way too many clothes in my closet or shirts I don't wear, and we're going to go through that. It's when kids give away things that are really valuable to them. Because they think they say they don't need it anymore. So your child has an Xbox and they give it away, or your child has a favorite pair of earrings and they give those away. I'd want to ask kids about that, and I want to keep my eye on that. Is that a single incident, or are they giving away other things too? Your Xbox, your favorite T-shirt, a pair of sneakers that I know you love. What's going on? We want to ask about that.
Mm-hmm. Another quick one. Who is the, if you know off the top of your head, the author of the Joey Pixis series? There are several parents who are interested in that.
Okay, hold on. I think I have one in my bookshelf, so I'm going to turn around. The author is Gantos, Gantos.
Okay.
And also, of course, I think the character in The Lightning Thief and that series, I could be wrong, but I think that character also has ADHD. So that would be another series to check out. But the Joey Pixis books are great for, I would say anywhere from 6th grade readers to 8th grade readers.
Mm-hmm. And lastly, several parents, we're all still working at home remotely in a lot of cases, and they're allowing their kids to do the screen time thing while they're working. How does a parent avoid the guilt of that? They find it very, a good situation where their child is occupied while they're working. Is there any?
That's a great question. So I want to just say, you're doing the best you can with really difficult circumstances. And again, there are different kinds of screen time. It's one thing to game all day, but could you break that up somehow with an audiobook, with a scholastic activity video, with a trip to the zoo virtually, with watching a TV show, try to diversify what they're doing on the screens. And that I think would keep their minds a little bit more active and could relieve your guilt. Like, oh, today my child went to this scholastic, watched the scholastic thing on how elephants live in Africa, or, something that they're interested in. This is important because if you can diversify, particularly if there's a balance between screen time and maybe just audio time, like listening to a story, it uses different parts of the brain and gives your eyes a break. But mostly, I want to say that if you're working at home and you have a child with ADHD, you have a lot of issues and problems and challenges that you are juggling. You also have a lot of joys, of course, but you really are doing a lot of juggling, and you've got to do what works.
Yep. That was excellent. Yeah. I like the audiobook or the other options for screen time. So I think the hour's up. Thanks so much for being here and sharing your expertise. It was excellent as usual. So I wanted to thank you so
much. Thank you so much, Wayne. And thank you everyone for tuning in. And we'll make sure you get a link for that free download on some tips to manage anxiety in your family. Please check out my website, drsharonsaline.com, and also check out my Facebook page. I post a lot of interesting information and articles and links to things related to raising kids with ADHD and living a happy and content life.
Thanks again, Sharon.
Thank you. And thanks for having me join the Attitude webinar series.
And thanks to everyone else for being here. We appreciate you attending. And please join us next week on July 9th when Stephen Shore will talk about coping strategies for adults on the autism spectrum. Thanks everyone for being here, and have a really great day.
For more Attitude podcasts and information on living well with attention deficit, visit attitudemag.com. That's ADDITUDEMAG.com. That's ADDITUDEMAG.com. That's ADDITUDEMAG.com.
You love podcasts, the stories, the laughs, the unexpected turns. But when this episode ends, the silence starts. Not anymore. Audiobooks.com turns that silence into your next great adventure. With over 450,000 titles, from bestsellers to hidden gems, your love for listening just found its new best friend. And because you already know the joy of audio, we're giving you 3 free audiobooks to start your journey. Imagine your favorite podcast, now with unlimited episodes. That's audiobooks.com. Keep the story going. Sign up for your free trial at audiobooks.com/podcastfree today. Because for podcast lovers like you, the end of an episode is just the beginning. That's audiobooks.com/podcastfree.